Good morning, Kahal Kadosh. Beruchim Abayim, everybody. Erev Shabbat Kodesh, Parashat Bo Makam Siga. Today, the 6th day of Tevet, corresponding to the 7th of January. Today's breakfast, as well it was for the entire week, graciously dedicated by the Falak family, the Ilui Nishmat, their beloved father, Ezra ben Sara, alav shalom. Additionally, today's class, sponsored by David Rabban and family, the Ilui Nishmat, his beloved father, Emmanuel Rafael Hai ben Hannah, alav shalom, as well as by Mr. Albert Aides, the Ilui Nishmat, his mother, Nizha Bat Fortune, Aleiha Shalom, Iratzon, to the words of Torah and the Berachot, that the Kahal Kadosh will say that the Neshamot have an Aliyah in Gan Eden. Amen. Amen. So, we really did not speak much this week about the Parashat Bo. So, perhaps I'll share with the Kahal a couple of pointers, which I think it's important to learn from this week's Parashat. Perhaps I'll concentrate in 3 or 4 matters which are very relevant for everyday life, because as you may remember, in Parashat Bereshit, the beginning of the Chumash, the first Rashi of the Parashat says, Amar Rabbi Ishaq. Rabbi Ishaq said, which we attribute Rabbi Ishaq being the father of Rashi, because Rashi, his name was Rabbeinu Shlomo Ishaki, Yani Rabbeinu Shlomo, son of Ishaq. So I believe that Rashi, in the first verse of the Torah, automatically gives honor to his father. But what his father said, listen to this. לא הייתה צריכה להתחיל אלא מהחודש הזה לכם ראש חודשים. He says, why the opening statement of the Torah is about the creation of the world. Start from the real aspect of the Torah. What is the real opening statement of the Torah? The pasuk that's found in this week's Torah portion, when the Torah tells us this month is the first month of the Jewish calendar, also known as the Mizvah of Rosh Chodesh. So technically speaking, Parashat Bo is Parashat Bereshit. Yes, if you read between the lines of what I'm saying. So then the question Rashi asks is, if that's the case, why do you give me 15 Parashiyot between Bereshit and Bo? Short answer, Borei Olam teaches the world, not only that he is the creator of the world, but he is the owner of the world, and the purpose of the creation of the world was the Torah, and Am Israel is the chosen nation, and the land of Israel is the Holy Land. That's the summary of that Rashi. So let's fast forward. Excuse me. Parashat Bo. The pasuk says, "Hachodesh hazeh lachem." This month is the first month of the Jewish calendar. What does it mean? The Goim, Hamavdil, when they write the month of January, what's the month number is January? The first. In Judaism, the first month is Nisan. Maybe for Goim is April, the 4th. But from a Torah perspective, Chodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim. That's why there is a she'elah being asked to Chacham Obadiah Yosef. If you are allowed to use secular, non-Jewish dates in your way of life. Let's say you're going to write a check to the synagogue today, Be'ezat Hashem. Say amen.
Amen.
Beautiful. A nice one. If you need help, I'll let you know. I help you. Okay? Who are you going to write? 1 7th, 22. That's a halachic problem. Why? Because the Torah says that which is the first month? Nisan. And according to our Torah, what year are we? 5782. So how can you write 2022 or January? So the short answer is, let's clarify, I'm not trying to change anyone's life. I'm only telling you what's written. Okay? That, first of all, Chazaku Baruch, in Israel, it's very common that people write checks with Hebrew dates, and the documents have Hebrew dates, and it will be processed. Outside of Israel, if you're going to write in a check, today is the month of Shevat, you're going to write 11/6/5782, it's going to bounce like a rubber band. If checks after 6 months, they can no longer be, cashed, so to speak. I'm not sure that that's halakha from the banking, but I heard this in the past, that a check, you cannot deposit a check with a premature date, and a check is older than 6 months, the bank may place a longer hold, etc. So Rabbi Yosef concludes and it says, there is no prohibition to utilize secular dates in a check or the year, because that is the law of the land, known as Dinah de Malchuta Dinah. But it's important to know that there were 3 Mizvot that Moshe Rabbeinu had difficulty in understanding how to perform this Mizvot. One of them was Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh. The other one was Menorah. The other one was Shekel. Rashi Tevot Moshe. Menorah, Shekel, a Chodesh. Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't understand. You tell me God to celebrate Rosh Chodesh. How do I know when is Rosh Chodesh? What are the protocols of Rosh Chodesh? Hazaku Baruch. Okay, I'm telling you the moon is Rosh Chodesh. Now, how does the moon needs to look like? That's why the Pasuk says, a Chodesh hazeh, God says to Moshe, Kazeh ra'a bekadesh. When you see the location of the moon, and the rotation of the moon, and the position of the month, that is Rosh Chodesh. From here we learn a parallel halakha, that you're not allowed to marry your wife unless you see her. Kazeh ra'a, now that this is your wife that you're going to marry, bekadesh, then you are able to offer her kiddushin. Don't marry because of a picture.
Rabbi, who does that?
Oh, I give you name and numbers.
Now in our time.
In our time, people discard shidduchim because of a picture. That's a problem. They go to Facebook, they go to Instagram, they look for the name. Filters, problematic. Many years back, I remember the story.
Egypt was different than
Right, I'll tell you the story.
Postcards.
Right, they used to send postcard. So what happened one time, I remember this story in Argentina. A fellow wanted to get married, and he wanted a Syrian girl. So another guy in the shul says, you know what, I have a beautiful sister, I'll show you the picture, send her the ticket to come by boat, you have to understand, from Halab to Damascus to Argentina, I don't know how many weeks, and we're going back in the mid-20s or 30s, okay? And the guy looks at the picture, they used to have these black and white, remember pictures?
Yes.
Okay, like with the touch-up.
Polaroid.
No, what Polaroid? Polaroid wasn't in the world yet. We're going back 70 years at least.
Which one?
Yeah, Polaroid, Alav Shalom also. They went and they left. Oh, that Tahiyat HaMetim?
It's so small.
Oh, now they have Tahiyat HaMetim. Okay, the guy looks at the picture, says, okay, I send the ticket. They send a telegram, the boat is docking in Buenos Aires, the port. Go pick her up. Come pick me up. Okay, the guy goes to the port. The guy is carrying a picture because, again, there's no Instagram or WhatsApp. Okay, you hear, you check, you track the person. So the guy is waiting. All the passengers are going down. And guess what? The dock is completely empty, with the exception of one girl. And he looks at the girl, and he says, Min Jaye, yani, where are you coming from? From Halab. What's your name? Let's call it Esther Cohen. I only threw a name, just coincidence. If your wife happens to be named Esther Cohen, nothing to do with this. Just in case, he says, but what happened to, what's your name? No, my name is Miriam Cohen. So what happened to Esther? Esther got married in Halab. So they sent me in my stead. But it says, La lame, tahazele, tashema. The picture. Yeah, of course. My sister is the good-looking one. What happened? Ask me what happened.
He sent her back.
No, Haz v'shalom. He married her and built a beautiful family. Happy ending. Yeah, okay. Happy ending story. So that's why God says to Moshe, "Kazeh ra'a bekadesh." I'll show you, and then you proceed. The other two is the mitzvah of Mahasita Shekel, and the other one is the mitzvah of menorah. That Moshe Rabbeinu was told, build the menorah, a single piece of gold, the way the Parashat will describe in a few weeks, when we start Melechet HaMishkan. Now, I ask you a question. If technically speaking, the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh is the first mitzvah of the Torah.
Yeah.
Based on Rashi, mitzvah number 1 of the Torah should have been Rosh Chodesh. What's the specialty of Rosh Chodesh? Why Hashem selects the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh as the opening list of all of the mitzvot of the Torah? Yes, in Sefer Bereshit we had mitzvot, but let's be honest here. The mitzvot that were discussed in Sefer Bereshit, they are mitzvot of situations. For example, Gid HaNasheh. For example, circumcision. The true source of the Torah for circumcision is not the story of Abraham Avinu. It's actually Parashat Tazria. Ubayom Hashemini imol besar orlato. That's where the commandment is given. Abraham Avinu was told about the milah, Faddal. Then you have the first purpose of the creation of the world. Peru, Urbu. Be fruitful and multiply. But this still doesn't answer why Rosh Chodesh was chosen as the first official commandment of the Torah. We'll explain in a moment. We need to understand that the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh is not a simple mitzvah. We celebrate Rosh Chodesh because, thank God, we have a calendar. We know when Rosh Chodesh is. Today is very easy. Go to the Magen Avraham Siddur. At the end of the Siddur, it gives you the list of all the holidays for the next 25 years. Here I have it in front of me. And it tells you Rosh Chodesh, when Rosh Chodesh is one day, when Rosh Chodesh is another day. Yani, I can keep this Siddur till the year 2035.
Wow.
And I have the calendar of every month when Rosh Chodesh will be. Every holiday, every fast day till the year 2035. Yani, another 13 years. So remember my speech 13 years from today. All right? On Erev Shabbat Kodesh Parashat Bo, you said 13 years ago that we have the access. It is true. And as the years go by, the years will go further. But before this opportunity that we have access to, it's available, how was Rosh Chodesh determined going back even 1800 years ago, 2000 years ago? Chazak u'baruch, by the witnesses. So Rosh Chodesh has a certain peculiarity that is a Mizvah from the Torah, but you need the Hachamim. Without the Hachamim, the Mizvah of Rosh Chodesh cannot be observed. Let's say that we don't have access to the calendar, and we need to determine when day of Rosh Chodesh is. Guess what? I cannot tell you when Rosh Chodesh will be. You know why? Because we are outside of Eretz Israel. And Rosh Chodesh was determined in Eretz Israel. So it says in Divrei Mordechai, the Torah teaches us the power of the Torah as well as the power of Hachamim. For example, we have Torah shebichtav, the written Torah, and the oral Torah. And once we combine both elements, then we understand, okay, this is how the Mizvah is going to be done. Based on this, now we understand why the Torah technically is telling me Rosh Chodesh is the first Mizvah. You know why? Because a person, a Yehudi, cannot succeed as a Yehudi without the Torah shebe'al peh, without the oral Torah. If you're going to say, I only follow the biblical way of writing, I'll guarantee you that many of the mitzvot of the Torah, you will not have a clue how to do them. For example, the mitzvah of tefillin. This week's Torah portion, Kadeshli Kol Vechol, the final aliyah of the Parashat of today, is about the mitzvah of tefillin. The pasuk says, Behaya leot uzikaron ben anecha. The Torah says the tefillin is a reminder between your eyes. So you know the Talmud tells us that there was a time in history that people used to put on tefillin here, between the eyes, because that's called ben anecha. Other opinion says no, they will hang it on the wall and they will write, there will be karaim, the sect of Jewish people who follow the biblical commandment based on the writings of the Torah, without commentaries and without the oral law. So the Parashat today teaches us that a person must connect Torah shebichtav, Torah shebe'al peh. Hence you have, for example, the Shulchan Aruch. What's the meaning of the Shulchan Aruch? Shulchan Aruch, we usually call it the code of Jewish law. But I'll tell you a secret. That's not what Shulchan Aruch means. Shulchan Aruch means the table is set. How happy you feel, you come from the knis, you finish praying, you come to the breakfast room, the breakfast is ready waiting for you. Very easy, convenient. That's exactly what the Shulchan Aruch is. Shulchan Aruch goes straight to the point of the code of Jewish law. This is how you put on tefillin, this is the beracha that you say, this is how you put on the talet, that's the situation in case A, case B, etc. And the Torah on top of that gave permission to the Hachamim to create, let me clarify, the Torah, Hachamim rather, don't have the permission to allow something that is forbidden by the Torah. Once we have a prohibition from the Torah, khalas. But Hachamim have the power to enact fences of spiritual protection for the Jewish people. This is the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that says, Asu seyag la Torah. Build a fence to protect the Torah. Hence we learn a lot of the laws of marriage, a lot of the laws of interacting with Goim, a lot of the laws of conversion, a lot of the laws of eating food cooked by the Goim, and I brought specifically these scenarios because in all these cases, from a Torah perspective, things are in a certain way permissible to a certain extent, but when Hachamim sense the fear of assimilation, God forbid, or intermarriage, or blending with other nations of the world, they needed to create a fence to spiritually protect the Jewish people. And that is the power of Torah shebe'al peh, and that is the power of the Torah.
Can you marry a carrier?
Repeat that again.
Can you marry a non-carrier? Can marry a carrier?
He's asking a good question. The short answer is asking as follows. Can a person that is a non-Karaite can marry a Karaite? Let's explain to the Kahal first what is a Kara'i means. Kara'i has many explanations. One of them is from Lashon Keri'ah. Keri'ah with Aleph. Keri'ah means readers. They read the Torah, let's call it, they read the Bible, and they follow the biblical commandment based on the way that's written. They don't have Rashi, they don't have commentaries, they don't have halacha, they don't have nothing. This is the entire textbook, okay? So the short answer is, I will not perform such a wedding, personally, and I will advise this fellow, be careful who you marry. Because at the end of the day, let's be honest here. For example, even though let's say that they are Jewish from birth, but they live in a way which is against the Torah, you will have an issue from day one of marriage. For example, if she allows a Goya to cook in your home, or when it comes to family purity, they share the same bed, they just are not intimate, because that's how they decipher that prohibition from the Torah. But the Hachamim, with a great wisdom, understanding that temptation is challenging, they added certain fences of protection. One of them is physical distance, sleeping in separate beds, having 7 clean days prior to going to the mikveh. And as someone who deals with these situations, these halachot really help the person emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So if you're going to marry, not you, God forbid, but if a Yehudi will marry a woman, a wife, or a wife is going to marry a husband who follow this group, you're going to have issues from day one of your marriage.
In Egypt, you never marry. In Egypt.
Of course, in Egypt, nobody would allow such a marriage.
Absolutely.
Of course not. Of course. Anyways, so I think that was message number 1. Message number 2. We find an interesting debate. I spoke about this very briefly the other night, but it was a different audience, and it was very late at night. So I'm going to say it now during the daytime hours. In this week's Torah portion, we find a debate between Parao and Moshe Rabbeinu. This debate is found in the beginning of the Parashat. When finally Parao is about to throw in the towel after 7 plagues in last week's Torah portion, and Bo are 3 more plagues, hence the numerical value of the word Bo is the number 3. You have Arbe, Hoshech, Makat Bechorot, the locust, darkness, and the firstborn. Finally, the servants of Parao, they say to Parao, Dachilak, let him go. Let him go. Aterem teda, ki abeda Misraim. Misraim says, you don't know that Egypt is the laughing stock of the world? Egypt is going down the drain. So Parao calls back Moshe and Aaron and listen to the words. Vayomer alehem, Parao says to them, Lechu idu et Hashem Elokechem, go serve God. Go. Mi ba mi ha'olechim. Parao asked the question to Moshe Rabbeinu, who is going to serve God? Moshe answers in a very clear and eloquent manner. Vayomer Moshe, Moshe says, Bina'arenu ubiskenenu nelech. We're going to go with our youth, we're going to go with our seniors, bebanenu, with our sons, ubibnotenu, and our daughters. Yani, you include the young, you include the old, you include the young boys and the young girls. Let's clarify that when Moshe Rabbeinu says the youth and the old, he uses a plural language, which means male and female. So we have all the ladies are coming, all the men are coming, all the teenagers are coming, all the retired are coming, and all the below bar or bat mitzvah are coming. The question is, who is not coming? Everyone is coming. As the song says, no Jew will be left behind. That's from Moshe Rabbeinu's Parashat. He said, what's the question? Who is coming? What, do you think I'm going to take only 2/3 of the nation and leave the third to assimilate in Egypt? We all are going to go. And comes Parao, and it says, no. Lochen, lechuna hagevarim be'idu et Hashem. You know what? Take the senior citizens because I cannot change them. Leave the youth and young professionals, young adults, teenagers and children in Egypt. So what Parao is telling Moshe, Moshe, you want to keep your Judaism alive. You have the formula. You need to be all-inclusive. Senior citizens, middle-aged, young adults, teenagers, and children. It says once we have all that, then we are in the right track. Parao says, I cannot change the seniors, but I can change the rest. Moshe says, if I don't have the rest, how are we going to guarantee the future of the Jewish people? And you know, when this became a mandatory position by Moshe Rabbeinu, fast forward, when it comes to the giving of the Torah, and God requested from Moshe, Moshe, who is going to guarantee that the Torah will be observed?
Youth.
Hold on. First, Moshe says, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. God says they are dead. They're gone from the world. Who is going to guarantee? I am going to guarantee with Aharon. And what's going to be when you leave the world? So we have prophets, Nevi'im. But what's going to be when the prophets leave the world? Remember that prophecy doesn't exist already for 2,000 years, give or take, since the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. And prophecy is delivered only in Israel. So finally, after Moshe Rabbeinu thinking, Moshe Rabbeinu says the magic words, Banenu Arevim Ba'adenu. Our children are our guarantee. Meaning to say, every time the person educates the new generation, we are basically continuing the link that actually started in today's Parashat, when Moshe Rabbeinu says to Parao, if I don't have the youth, forget about it. And that's a lesson that in our synagogue, the Edmund J. Safra synagogue in Aventura, we take to heart. That's why we invest a lot, and you know me, I already spoke about this, I don't have to be repetitive, how much resources and effort and manpower we are investing in the youth. If it's the young boys, the young girls, post-bar mitzvah, pre-bar mitzvah. Why? Because if we don't invest with them during the formative years, who knows if they're going to be around 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. So we need to plant now, as David HaMelech says, Azor'im bedim'a berina iksoru. And I want to be honest with you, don't think that everything is smooth sailing when we're dealing with teens. Okay? When we're dealing with teens, believe me, we need to be at times parents, friends, and teachers.
Yes, that.
Because sometimes the parents, they bring the child to the world, they pay the tuition, they give them a roof over the head, and they tell you deal with it. That's a problem. But don't worry, we're targeting the problems as well. It's a matter of educating people. I think that those are very powerful messages. There is one more, but I spoke about it in the earlier part of the week. And let's discuss maybe 2-3 lines of the Gemara, and maybe time allowing, we go to the Musar of today. So the Gemara of today is a famous Gemara, discusses certain things that God, Hashem, really doesn't like them. But actually, I'm lying to you. The language of the Gemara says, son'an. What's the meaning in Hebrew of the word son'an?
Hates.
Hates.
Yeah.
And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, Af eni ho'avam. I also don't like these attitudes. Now, what could be 4 things that God doesn't like? We already know the 4 guys that God doesn't like. The angry person, the one that lies, the one that gets drunk, and the one that mocks others. Those are 4 types of people that God really doesn't like. Let's see 4 situations that God really doesn't like. You will know probably the first one. The Gemara says, Anichnas lebeto pitom. A person that walks into their home unannounced. Your own home. Unannounced. Bekol shiken lebet havero. And obviously, it's a big avon. You go to your friend's house unannounced. Let's say you're walking around and you say, oh, let me go visit him. I'm down the block from his home. And then you come and hold on. And let's be honest here. In the time of the Talmud, this was definitely a bigger problem that perhaps it could be today. Because in the time of the Talmud, you didn't have a way to let your wife know I'm coming in, to call her, or call your friend. Are you home? I'm in the area. Can I pay you a visit? Today with a phone call, you can take care of the matter and avoid putting yourself in this position. But how do you think was in the time of the Talmud? There was no concierge or valet or front desk attendant or intercom or picking up the phone. You walked on the street, you just went through the door. You didn't have multi-lock or a ring by the door.
But that's your own home.
Your own home, right. And what's the problem? Excellent question. I'll answer you. The commentaries explain here, seniut, modesty. Maybe your wife is not properly dressed.
But it's your wife.
So what? If she's nida, she needs to be dressed in a certain way.
Right.
Number 1. You have to understand what people do out there and what the real deal of the Torah is 2 different things. So issue number 1, seniut, modesty. Number 1. But I can add my 2 cents, and you know me already. I have learned this Gemara many years back. So imagine yourself, you come to the home unannounced, and dinner is not on the table. And your wife would have loved to have heads up that you're coming, so the dinner is available for you when you come in.
That makes sense.
Or maybe thank you for accepting the sense making. Hazako Baruch. Thank you. No, it's very important.
I'm just joking.
No, I'm saying in a joking way as well. It makes sense or not?
It makes
Or let's say that your wife is doing homework with the kids. Or maybe the house is not as tidy as she would have wanted it to have it ready when you come in. Because she knows that you left your house 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. You went to pray. You went to work. You're coming back home 10, 12 hours later. And she knows that you're looking forward to come home. But the table is not set up. And you say, Uli, what is this? So how do you circumvent that? By informing. Let her know. Today, it means pick up the phone. I do this religiously for years. After I learned this Gemara maybe 30 years ago, maybe more, I do this till today. I'll be home in 10 minutes. So you know what the new line in my home? Your type of 10 minutes or real 10 minutes? Because sometimes my 10 minutes, and I tell her, I'm closing the door of the office, I'm going to go into the car, I'll be home in 10 minutes.
You have to call
Say,
her from
okay,
the
half
car.
an hour.
Change it. You have to call her from the car.
I call it from the car, always. Says, I'm heading home. Do you need anything? No, come straight home. I'm a good soldier.
Great.
Unbelievable. Anyways, thank you. Anyways, so now she knows, oh, you're going to be coming. Understand? Now, the food is going to be ready. Or the house is going to be a bit more presentable. You come home, food is not ready. You say, what you do all day? That's going to create mahloket.
Yes, for sure.
Hazaku Baruch. So the Gemara is already giving us the heads up, and it says, even though it's your home,
Hello.
knock. I'm coming. The Gemara goes further.
What if you want to visit a friend and just knock on the door?
No, that's not allowed. We just learned that it's not allowed to do. If in your own home you have to let your wife know, call shiken your friend. Imagine yourself, you say, oh, Rabbi, I was in the building. I came to pay you a visit. How do you think I'm going to feel internally? Not happy. Because maybe I need to leave. Maybe it's Shabbat afternoon, like it happens more than you think. No, Rabbi, I was in the building. I wanted to say hello. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. When are you leaving? I need to rest in honor of Shabbat. Or maybe you come unannounced. I'm not going to serve you something to drink or something to eat. What am I going to give you? Leftover Israeli salad from Shabbat lunch? True. Ask your wife how happy she will be if she knows that someone will come. And now you thought that you were doing a great mitzvah. I went to visit the rabbi. I went to visit my friend. According to the Gemara, you activated God's despising you.
Why?
Because you were not considerate with your friend. 1 second. You were not considered with your friend. That's simple. You know what this Gemara is about? Sensitivity. You're imposing on your friend. Again, today is easy. On Shabbat, it's not easy at all. Because how are you going to scream from the balcony, Moshe, are you awake? In the weekday, you can pick up the phone. I get phone calls like this occasionally. Oh, Rabbi, I'm in the neighborhood. Can I see you? Says, I would love to see you, but I have 2 other appointments.
Thank you.
And I have to go someplace so we can reschedule. I'll try to accommodate as much as I can, but sometimes I can't. Unless, God forbid, it's an emergency. So then I need to reshuffle things around. That's what the Gemara is teaching us. sensitivity to your wife, sensitivity to your friend. Once you are sensitive in this positive way, then your personality changes. Last night, I gave a class in Spanish. I'm going to share something that I did not say today. Remember, in this week's Parashat, the Parashat talks about fulfilling a Mizvah to the donkey, which usually, when it comes to non-kosher animals, we don't have really Mizvot. Yeah, concerning non-kosher animal, don't eat it. That's it, don't eat it. With one exception. 2 non-kosher animals. One is called the hamor, the donkey. In this week's parasha, Bechol Peter hamor tivdeh vese. You say this every day of your life, with the exception of Shabbat and holidays. Is part of the parashiot of Tefillin. Kadeshli kol bechor. When the Hazan begins, Vaydaber Amonai el Moshe lemor Kadeshli kol bechor. One of the sentences talks about the Mizvah of redeeming the firstborn male donkey, Hamor. And why this Mizvah was given with the donkey? Because the donkey helped us when we left Egypt carrying the wealth. So the Torah says, don't forget, the donkey helped you 3,334 years ago. I ask you a question. Do you know which donkey helped your forefather? And yet the Torah says, go ahead. Or the dog, לכלב תשליכון אותו. You have a piece of non-kosher meat, you give it to the dog. Why? Because the dogs did not bark on the night of the 10th plague.
That's because Hashem came down.
Of course. But what the Talmud says, that when death, God forbid, roams through a city, the dogs starts barking. The owners doesn't know. Why is he barking suddenly? The dogs have a perception, the Talmud says, to smell that somebody is going to be picked up any minute.
Somebody's gonna be gone.
Picked up. Picked up means taken back to Shamayim. That's a mild way of saying somebody is leaving the world soon. That night, God came down. No angels, no messengers, and that was the night of execution of the firstborn. The dog stayed quiet. If God is doing it, I'm not saying a word. God says, you stay quiet, you alter your nature. Because of me, I owe you one. Non-kosher meat found, give it to the dog. לכלב תשליכון אותו. So imagine yourself, if gratitude, which is basically the message of these 2 mitzvot, is connected to animals, imagine yourself towards humans. Yes.
So I was in a situation that during Shabbat, I was in the synagogue, and I have a very good friend, and he goes to that synagogue, and he's very consistent. He's the kind of person you'll never miss a day, and if he didn't show up, you're worrying. So it was during Shabbat, I couldn't contact him. So after Tefillah, he lives close by. I passed by, not to go to eat or to hang out. I just wanted to see if he was okay. He came to the door. He told me that his wife wasn't feeling well, and that's why he didn't come to the synagogue. And I said, okay, I only showed up just to see if you're okay, and then I left.
Excellent. In your scenario, you acted very good. You were concerned how come your friend who always comes is not there, and you did not go with the intention of making it a social visit. I'm only checking on you, making sure that everything is good. That's a beautiful gesture. But the case that the Gemara is referring to is not because you're worried that the fellow didn't show up. You're doing fine, I'll see you later, Shabbat Shalom. Now you want to come in. I want to schmooze. And you want to sit down and you want to talk. That's, sorry, I woke you up. That's the sensitivity. This is a Wi-Fi connection. That's why when it captures the signal, suddenly it has Tahiyyat Metim. Okay? So that's the sensitivity that the Torah and the Parashat teaches us. In a beautiful and in a very clear matter. So lesson of the day, before you go home, call your wife. Sweetheart, I'm on the way. She said, why are you calling me? I said, no, I'm the new me. Says, we learned today with the rabbi that you have to let know the wife, maybe you need something from the supermarket. Says, are you okay? Are you okay? It doesn't matter, believe me, if she says, oh wow, I like my new husband, meaning to say conscientious, sensitive, caring, trying to help, Chazak u'baruch.
But you say, don't call me, I call you.
Okay, that's a different story. So you can ask her, so you don't want me to call you when I'm on the way back home?
No.
If she says no, okay, you're bothering me, what do you want?
Exactly.
Right?
I'm busy
Okay.
now.
Shlomo Melech says that each person knows their own nefesh behemto. Yani, what does it mean? You know your particular life. In other words, I tell you from my experience that my wife is very thankful and grateful that I call before I get home. And that I ask, do you need anything from the street or from the supermarket? I'm going to be in this neighborhood. I'm going to be in that neighborhood. That's it. I think that we're going into overtime. We wish everybody a beautiful Shabbat, wherever you may be. Thank you for everybody's participation and sponsorship of today's classes. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.